The outpost perched on the cliff face like a metallic spider, its chrome legs anchored deep into the rust-colored rock of Kepler-440b. Commander HFY watched through the reinforced transperistal as another transport ship descended through the amber clouds, its hull gleaming against the perpetual twilight of the planet's extended dusk. The Galactic Coalition had assembled its finest here warriors, tacticians, and xenobiologists from 17 different worlds, all because of what lurked in the valleys below. "The human transport has arrived," announced Lieutenant Kriva, her crystalline voice cutting through the tension that had settled over the command center. Like morning fog, the Alteran officers' bioluminescent patches flickered nervously, betraying the calm she tried to project. Dr. Lenora Chase, as requested by the Terran diplomatic corps. HFY's mandibles clicked in what passed for a sardonic laugh among his species, a single human. Against that, he gestured toward the massive holographic display dominating the center of the room, where thermal imaging showed a creature the size of a small shuttle, moving through the jungle canopy 40 kilometers away. The beast's heat signature pulsed like a living star, and wherever it passed, the indigenous wildlife fled in concentric circles of panic. The assembled officers, a mix of insectoid HFY, crystalline Alterans, and gas-breathing methane collective representatives, studied the display with the grim fascination of surgeons examining a malignant tumor. They had tried everything: sonic barriers that the creature simply walked through, electromagnetic nets that it tore apart like tissue paper, and kinetic bombardment that only seemed to make it angrier. 3 separate strike teams had been sent to study or neutralize the threat. None had returned. "With respect, Commander," interjected Dr. Thane Moorcock, the expedition's lead xenobiologist, his nasal British accent cutting through the alien murmur of the command center. "We've cataloged this species' capabilities extensively. 14-meter height, estimated weight of 47 tons, chitinous exoskeleton capable of deflecting plasma rounds, and intelligence ratings that suggest complex problem-solving abilities. This isn't a job for a..." He paused, consulting his tablet. "Veterinarian." The docking bay's proximity sensors chimed, and all eyes turned to the small view screen showing the human transport's final approach. The ship was absurdly small compared to the massive coalition vessels surrounding it, a converted medical transport that looked more suited for house calls than interstellar travel. As it touched down with a gentle hiss of retro thrusters, the assembled officers could see its pilot through the cockpit window, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing what appeared to be simple fatigues, rather than any kind of armor. "She doesn't even have an escort," whispered Kriva, her patches dimming with concern. Dr. Chase emerged from her ship, carrying only a worn leather satchel and what appeared to be a thermos of coffee. She moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had spent decades in veterinary clinics, her eyes already scanning the assembled alien architecture with professional interest, rather than intimidation. When she looked up at the command center's observation deck, she offered a small wave that somehow managed to be both casual and respectful. "Gentle beings," HFY announced, his voice carrying the weight of command, "I present our solution." Dr. Lenora Chase, Terran veterinarian, specializing in what humans call dangerous wildlife management. The way he said it made it clear he considered the entire concept somewhere between optimistic and delusional. As the human woman approached the command center, her footsteps echoing in the corridors designed for beings twice her size, the creature on the thermal display suddenly stopped moving. For the first time in 3 weeks, the apex predator of Kepler-440b had gone completely still, as if it to sense that something fundamental was about to change in the delicate balance of fear that had gripped this world. Dr. Lenora Chase stood in the command center like a calm lighthouse in a storm of alien anxiety, her worn veterinary jacket contrasting sharply with the gleaming military uniforms surrounding her. The coffee in her thermos had gone cold during the briefing, but she hadn't touched it anyway. Her full attention was focused on the holographic display, showing the creature's last known position. "Magnificent," she murmured, rotating the 3-dimensional image with practiced fingers. The other officers exchanged glances that managed to convey both confusion and concern across species barriers. Look at the muscle structure in the hindquarters. This is built for speed, not just strength. And these markings along the dorsal ridge. She zoomed in on scarred tissue visible through the thermal imaging. Those aren't natural. Something hurt this animal badly. Commander HFY's mandibles clicked impatiently. Dr. Chase, with respect, we're not here to admire the creature's aesthetics. It's killed 43 survey team members across 6 different expeditions. Our priority is elimination, not rehabilitation. Lenora finally looked up from the display, her brown eyes holding the kind of steady patience that had served her well in countless emergency rooms and wildlife refuges. Commander, in my experience, animals don't kill for sport. They kill for food, territory, or because they're scared. A creature this size, this intelligent, it's not hunting your people. It's defending itself. Defending itself. Dr. Moorcock's voice pitched higher with incredulity. It attacked a fully armed reconnaissance team 50 kilometers from its established territory. It tracked them for days before. Before what? Lenora interrupted gently. Did it eat them? Did it establish a nest in their equipment? Or did it simply remove the threat and leave? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Kriva's bioluminescent patches flickered rapidly, a sign of agitation among her people. The bodies were found intact, she admitted. No evidence of predation. But the psychological profiles suggest what you'd expect from a highly intelligent creature that's been repeatedly attacked by strange beings with incomprehensible technology. Lenora finished. She moved to the tactical station, her fingers dancing over controls designed for beings with different anatomical structures. But she managed them with the adaptability of someone who had spent years working with equipment not built for human hands. What are you doing? HFY demanded as she pulled up geological surveys of the planet's surface. My job, Lenora replied without looking up. Where's the nearest nesting site for indigenous species? Something large enough to accommodate a creature this size, preferably with water access and natural wind patterns for temperature regulation. The assembled officers watched in growing bewilderment as the human veterinarian transformed their military command center into something resembling a field biology station. She pulled up migration patterns, seasonal weather data, and mineral composition reports with the efficiency of someone who had spent decades reading the subtle signs that revealed what animals needed to survive. Here, she said finally, highlighting a series of caves approximately 30 kilometers from the creature's current position. These caves have been geologically stable for over 10,000 years, multiple entrance points, and they're positioned to catch the prevailing winds from the ocean. Perfect for a species that needs to regulate body temperature. She paused, studying the data more carefully. And they're exactly where your first survey team established their base camp. The implications hit the room like a physical force. If the creature had been trying to reach its nesting site, and humans had unknowingly blocked its path, it's not a monster, Lenora said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of realization. It's a mother trying to get home. Outside the command center, the planet's twin moons had begun their nightly dance across the sky, casting double shadows that seemed to writhe with their own life. And somewhere in the jungle below, the apex predator of Kepler-440b remained motionless, as if waiting for someone to finally understand what it had been trying to communicate all along. The Night Watch found Dr. Chase on the observation deck, her veterinary bag open beside her as she prepared equipment that looked absurdly primitive compared to the military hardware surrounding her. Sonic tranquilizers and plasma rifles lined the walls, while she carefully arranged simple syringes, gauze, and what appeared to be ordinary antiseptic in neat rows on a field cloth. Doctor, Commander HFY approached with the careful gait of someone who had spent the last 6 hours having his assumptions systematically dismantled. Our thermal imaging shows the creature has moved closer during the night, 15 kilometers and closing. At this rate, it will reach the perimeter by dawn. Lenora looked up from her preparations, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. Good. That means it's finally decided to trust us enough to approach. Trust us. Kriva's bioluminescent patches strobed in patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Dr. Chase, This creature has demonstrated hostility toward every form of contact we've attempted. What makes you think? Because it's still alive, Lenora interrupted, her tone carrying the kind of matter-of-fact certainty that comes from decades of experience. Commander, if this creature wanted to destroy your outpost, it could have done so weeks ago. You've seen the intelligence reports it's capable of complex problem-solving. It understands your technology well enough to avoid your traps, and it's strong enough to tear through your defenses like paper. So why hasn't it? The question hung in the air like incense, heavy with implications none of them had considered. Dr. Moorcock shifted uncomfortably, his scientific worldview struggling to accommodate the possibility that their apex predator might be something other than a mindless killing machine. The supply runs, he said slowly, realization dawning. It's been watching our supply runs for weeks. It knows our schedules, our flight patterns, our defensive capabilities. If it wanted to attack when we were vulnerable, it would have done so already, Lenora finished. Instead, it's been trying to communicate. Every attack has been in response to humans entering its territory. Every casualty has occurred when your people have cornered it or blocked its movement patterns. This isn't predation, it's negotiation. She stood, shouldering her bag with the practiced ease of someone who had made countless house calls to farms and wildlife refuges. I'm going down there. The command center erupted in a symphony of alien protests. Zek's high-S mandibles clicked. Rapidly, Kriva's patches flashed in alarm, and the Methane Collective representative's translator struggled to keep up with the rapid fire. Concerns being expressed in chemical signatures. Absolutely not, Zek's declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I will not authorize a suicide mission based on veterinary intuition. Then don't authorize it, Lenora replied calmly. I'm not asking for permission, Commander. I'm informing you of my intentions. This creature has been trying to get home for weeks, and every time it tries, you shoot at it. It's scared, it's probably injured, and it's definitely desperate. The longer we wait, the more likely it becomes that someone human or otherwise is going to get hurt. She moved toward the exit, then paused at the doorway. I've spent 30 years working with Earth's most dangerous predators: tigers, polar bears, saltwater crocodiles, great white sharks. Every single one of them, no matter how fearsome they seemed, was just an animal trying to survive in a world that didn't understand them. This creature isn't any different. Through the observation deck's transparistell, the jungle below seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, the bioluminescent plants creating patterns that shifted like breathing. And somewhere in that alien wilderness, the apex predator of Kepler-44 to be continued its slow approach, drawn by something that transcended the language barriers between species, the universal recognition of someone who finally understood what it meant to be afraid, alone, and desperately trying to get home. As Dr. Chase made her way to the equipment bay to requisition a simple ground vehicle, the assembled officers watched the thermal display with new eyes, seeing not a monster approaching their fortress, but a lost soul finally finding someone willing to listen to what it had been trying to say all along. The ground vehicle's headlights cut through the pre-dawn darkness as Dr. Chase drove alone along the barely visible path that wound through Kepler-44b's ancient forest. Above her, the outpost's searchlights swept the jungle in systematic patterns, while the command center's communication array crackled with nervous chatter from 17 different species, all watching her progress with the fascination of witnesses to either a miracle or a disaster. Thermal contact, bearing to 70. Kriva's voice filtered through the comm system, her bioluminescent anxiety translating even across the radio waves. Distance, 300 meters and closing. Lenora brought the vehicle to a gentle stop in a clearing that seemed almost designed for this moment, a natural amphitheater, where the jungle's canopy opened to reveal the planet's twin moons. She could feel the creature's presence before she saw it, the same way she had learned to sense the mood of a wounded tiger or the intentions of a cornered bear. The forest had gone completely silent, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. I'm getting out of the vehicle, she announced calmly, her hand already on the door release. Negative, Commander Zek's high-S voice crackled through the comm. With barely contained panic, Dr. Chase, maintain your position. We have orbital weapons ready to provide cover fire. If you fire anything larger than a flashlight, you'll undo weeks of work." Lenora interrupted, stepping out into the alien air. The gravity was slightly heavier than Earth's, and the atmosphere carried sense that her brain couldn't quite categorize something between ozone and growing things with an underlying note of copper that might have been from the mineral-rich soil. She moved slowly, her veterinary bag slung over one shoulder, her hands visible and empty. The creature's thermal signature was so close now that she could hear it breathing deep, measured breaths that suggested careful control rather than predatory stalking. When she finally saw it, emerging from the shadows like a mountain deciding to walk, her first thought was not of fear, but of profound sadness. The apex predator of Kepler-440b was magnificent and terrible in the way that only truly ancient things could be. 14 meters of evolved perfection, with chitinous plates that gleamed like polished obsidian and eyes that held an intelligence that made her chest tighten with recognition. But it was the scars that told the real storoplasma. Burns along its flanks, kinetic impact wounds that had healed badly, and a deep gash across its left shoulder that still wept with infection. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice carrying the same tone she had used with countless injured animals over the decades. "They really did a number on you, didn't they?" The creature stopped moving, its massive head tilting slightly as if it were trying to understand this strange new sound. No weapons, no aggressive posturing, no attempt to establish dominance, just genuine concern from a creature barely a tenth its size. "Dr. Chase." Dr. Moorcock's voice was tight with scientific fascination and human terror. "The creature is displaying body language consistent with confusion," Lenora finished, never taking her eyes off the massive being before her. "It's never heard a human voice without an accompanying threat." She took a careful step forward, her movements deliberate and unthreatening. "It's okay, big guy. I'm not here to hurt you." The creature's response was unlike anything the orbital observers had recorded. It lowered its massive head, bringing its eyes to Lenora's level, and made a sound that was part vocalization, part harmonic vibration that she could feel in her bones. Not a roar of aggression, but something that sounded almost like a question. "That's it," she said softly, reaching slowly into her bag. "Let me help you with that shoulder. I know it hurts." In the command center 40 kilometers away, every instrument was recording what would later be called the most significant moment in interspecies communication since first contact. But for Dr. Lenora Chase, standing in an alien clearing with a wounded creature that had been terrorizing an entire galactic coalition, it was just another day at the office where fear gave way to understanding, and understanding led to healing. The apex predator of Kepler-440b, the monster that had caused 3 different species to request military intervention, carefully extended its injured shoulder toward the small human with the gentle hands and the voice that spoke of safety rather than threat. What happened next would be studied in xenobiology classes for generations to come. But for Dr. Lenora Chase, it was simply the moment when everything clicked into place. The creature she had started thinking of it as Atlas for reasons she couldn't quite explain remained perfectly still as she approached its injured shoulder, its breathing steady and controlled in the way of animals that had learned to endure pain without showing weakness. "The infection is deeper than I thought," she murmured, more to herself than to the fascinated audience monitoring from orbit. The wound was clearly from a plasma weapon, the kind of burns she had seen in her emergency veterinary work with military animals, but this had been left untreated for weeks, and the local bacteria had found a home in the damaged tissue. Atlas watched her with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of geological ages. But there was something else there now, a cautious hope that made Lenora's throat tight with emotion. When she began cleaning the wound with gentle, practiced movements, the massive creature actually leaned into her touch, a rumbling sound of relief vibrating through its chest. "Remarkable." Dr. Moorcock's voice filtered through the calm, his scientific detachment warring with obvious amazement. "The creature is exhibiting classic signs of trust bonding. Its cortisol levels are dropping, stress indicators are normalizing, and—" "Shut up, Moorcock," Lenora said without heat, her attention focused entirely on the delicate work of debridement. "You're making it nervous." In the command center, the assembled officers watched in stunned silence as the human veterinarian worked with the casual competence of someone who had spent decades treating animals that could kill her without effort. But it was Atlas's behavior that truly defied explanation, the way it adjusted its position to give her better access to the wound, the soft vocalizations that sounded almost like gratitude, and the careful way it moved to avoid disturbing her work. It's helping her," Kriva whispered, her bioluminescent patches pulsing in patterns that indicated deep confusion. "It understands what she's trying to do." As the first hints of dawn began to filter through the canopy, painting the clearing in shades of amber and gold, Lenora finished her work. The wound was clean, properly treated, and would heal without the life-threatening infection that had been slowly poisoning Atlas's system. But she wasn't done yet. "Now for the real problem," she said, reaching into her bag for her tablet. "Atlas, I need you to understand something. The humans at the outpost aren't your enemies. They're just scared, like you are, but they're blocking your path home, aren't they?" She showed the tablet to the massive creature, displaying the geological survey data she had compiled. Atlas's eyes fixed on the screen with unmistakable recognition, and when she highlighted the cave system 30 kilometers away, it made that harmonic vocalization again, but this time, the sound was tinged with something that could only be described as longing. "Your nesting site," Lenora said with certainty. "You've been trying to get there for weeks, but every time you approach, the humans shoot at you. So you've been waiting, hoping they would understand." She looked up into those ancient eyes, seeing reflected there the same patience and intelligence that had made her fall in love with veterinary work 40 years ago. "You're not just an apex predator, are you? You're a mother." The confirmation came not in vocalizations but in action. Atlas turned its massive head toward the cave system, then back to Lenora, then repeated the gesture with unmistakable meaning. After weeks of failed communication, the message was finally clear. "Let me go home." "Command, this is Dr. Chase," Lenora said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had just solved a puzzle that had stumped an entire galactic coalition. "I need you to evacuate the research station at coordinates 774 by 992, immediately." Dr. Chase, Commander Zek's high-S voice carried the weight of someone whose worldview had been fundamentally altered in the space of a single morning. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we get out of this lady's way so she can go home to her babies," Lenora replied, her hand resting gently on Atlas's massive flank. "She's been trying to tell us that for weeks. We just weren't listening." As the sun finally crested the horizon, painting the clearing in brilliant gold, the apex predator of Kepler-4 and the human veterinarian who had finally understood her stood together in perfect stillness, two mothers from different worlds, united by the universal language of compassion and the simple recognition that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't fear or aggression, but the courage to say, "It's just scared." In the distance, transport ships began lifting off from the research station, their pilots finally understanding that they weren't retreating from a monster, but making way for a mother's journey home.